All right. Hello, everybody. Glad to join you and have you join me and one of my great friends and colleagues, Stephanie Shipper, at this great fireside chat. This is just a conversation that we're going to have. I've taken some questions ahead of time. We've got some people that will be listening to it later. So this will be recorded and posted up on the website as well. We're going to have a good topic. And Stephanie here, I met her through the organization called Vistage, which is the world's leading CEO organization. She's one of the top speakers for them for many, many years, talking both on negotiations, communication, all the things that you need to kind of get through and make the right decisions and get what it is that you want in life. And yet she's also founder of the Freedom Trauma Project. Is that correct? Did I say that right?
Freedom Project, exactly
Trauma
right.
Freedom Project, yes. And so
Yep.
what a lot of people don't know about Stephanie, and I've worked with her directly on this, even in my own trauma, is that she is one of the country's top trauma specialists. She's got a very unique set of talent and skills, lots of degrees. And we're glad to have her on this fireside chat tonight because boy, this is the topic. It's starting to, I'm sure it's already happening at the airports, right? Where people are starting to wonder, what in the world is the sibling going to say? Well, Aunt Edna throw me the comment about my hair or my education. And sometimes we just seem that the family is on one very big mission. And it's not to have a festive dinner. It's to have the opinions thrown through dinner and the emoting thrown over the turkey and the stuffing. And it's really the opposite of that Hallmark commercial that we watch. So
Yeah.
I'm going to just kind of one of the great things when I sit with Stephanie and we can sit for hours and just kind of banter and talk, and I've learned so much from her. And I just love her wisdom. So I'm going to kind of go through things, Stephanie. And then I know when you say, hey, I got a hit or some knowledge of wisdom for you, Fitz, just go ahead and bring it on. Here's one thing that I've learned, and maybe you have taught me, maybe it's been another Vistage expert or speaker, but we tend to sometimes reset no matter how hard we work on the inside, right? We can work on the outside, but you can't control the outside. But when we work on the inside of ourselves, sometimes when we walk into that family situation, boy, we just reset, boom, shakalaka. It's like, 30 hours of that personal development and that working, that coaching, whatever it is. Sometimes it just triggers us and we can't stop. And I'm assuming it's because a neural pathway lights up, or as I think what you have said in the past, there's something that's residing in our sympathetic nervous system, this unconscious dialogue. So I want to figure out, how can you bump into Aunt Edna and perhaps those snarky relatives and not necessarily let your system get hijacked? How
Yeah.
can you prepare, right?
Right.
Without having to put duct tape on your mouth. So here's some things that I suggest, and I do know they have helped for me. One is, I do believe that there is great value and benefit in getting some mental fitness awareness. I do love how Vistage and Stanford are tied together. Stanford's done many, many years of research on the brain and how, I call it, the cow paths light up and how they light up subconsciously. And not always, in case if you have trauma, can you stop the negative
Right.
neural pathway from lighting up. But for many of us, it is okay to sometimes just, you'll teach in that mental fitness gym, you'll be taught, I should say, in that mental fitness gym to how to do some tactile responses, so that when you know that you're going into something, you might be rubbing your fingers together, you might be breathing, you might be feeling your toes, you're getting full awareness of yourself. So I do want to suggest that if you haven't done that, you can go up on the Leading Heart community portal and register for that class. It's offered all the time. And Stephanie, just give a little door of the crack of when it's repeating and you can't use any of the things that we're going to talk about, tell the audience a little bit about why we all have trauma. I mean, you've said it many times. We all have trauma, Fitz. And sometimes it resides in that subconscious, that story that's just chattering in the back of our mind, and we don't even know it's hijacking us. And so you refer to it as the, trauma that resides in the sympathetic nervous system. And so does that mean that we take in information from our five senses, and we start to feel the emotions and we start to get the feelings going, and all of a sudden we're on a roll and we don't even know how we got there? And
Yeah.
it's like, how do you get hitched to that train when you don't even know it?
Yes. I'm wondering if it would be useful to talk a little bit about how a trauma gets created. So we talk about what might hijack us, where
Yeah.
we have the reaction rather than the reaction. The reaction has us. We don't have the reaction as such.
Right. Yeah. We've been hijacked.
We've been hijacked. Would it be useful to talk
Yeah.
about what
Yeah.
might create that? So there's a term called EMLI, which is about a set of what I call quadrants that have to be in place for our central nervous system to determine that a trauma has happened. Because for people that look at the same incidents, not everyone has a traumatic experience.
Okay.
However, if you have all four of these conditions, your brain decides that it's a trauma. And the first one is called the E state, and that is an emotion about what you just witnessed or personally experienced. And that emotion is, this is terrible.
Mm.
The second piece is what's called the meaning state. And the meaning is made that it's not only terrible, that it is life-threatening to you,
Mm-hmm.
either psychologically or physically or both. The third piece is called the L state, and that is called a vulnerable landscape. This is if you are in a situation where you are what I would call permanently ungrounded because there is ongoing difficulties, like being in a war zone. You don't know when it's going to happen, but you know that something else is coming, so you never get to be grounded.
So kind of like that unpredictable state, not being
Yes,
able
from
to
which you
control it.
never recover. The
Ah.
second part of a vulnerable landscape is that you felt too young or too old to do anything about it. The third part is that you experienced that you were too weak or insufficiently strong to change the circumstances. If you have any one of those three in that part, then that registers you. So we now have an emotion, a meaning, and now we have a vulnerable landscape. And the last piece is called the inescapable piece. Inescapable means that you felt frozen in the circumstance, you felt held hostage by the circumstance, i.e., you couldn't do anything about it. So you felt like you were imprisoned by the memory. And in fact, you are imprisoned in the sense that you get locked into the time and a series of reactions as a safety mode. Because the brain, at the point that you have EMLI, says this is the trauma, we need to demarcate that in the brain because you felt unsafe. Unsafe is the big word. And what do I mean by unsafe? I mean that you have what we call an unconditional traumatic stimuli here, something that occurs and you believe that you're going to die as a result of it, either psychologically or physically or both. The reason that I would lay out all of these is because if you have had an experience of being unsafe, where you felt emotion, meaning, landscape ungrounded, and this inescapable with respect to any person in your family or any person that's going to visit with you at the holidays, you are going to have a traumatic response because it is literally unsafe. You are literally revisiting the past as a result of contact with them, as if it happened 30 seconds ago, even though it may have been 15 years ago.
It's interesting because I remember a story of an individual that I had mentored and coached for many years, saying that he had a traumatic experience as a young child. Excuse me for coughing. And what happened is he walked off to the barn with Grandpa on the day before Thanksgiving. And the barn is where this little boy, the man, was recalling back when he was very young, had his pet chickens and his pet turkeys. And him and Grandpa strolled hand in hand into the barn. And as the little boy started to look around for the turkey who was his buddy and his pal and his friend and his pet, he realized Grandpa had his head and neck in his hand and was twisting it and then cut the head off because that was going to be the dinner for turkey dinner. And
Yes.
so if you look at that situation, the little boy witnesses something terrible. It is his pet and his grandfather who just hurt his pet, and his pet no longer has a head. He then takes it probably a little bit more and says, whoa, Grandpa did that to my pet. Grandpa still has the axe in his hand. Whoa, am I in a situation? Should I be scared? He may actually have realized I'm too weak to run from Big Grandpa or from this axe. And then he begins to get frozen like this. And so what happens is Grandpa doesn't think anything of it. It's like, come on, little guy, let's go. We'll bring the turkey into Grandma and she'll cook it up and stuff it. And he's still like this. Now, maybe if he would have had a situation where Mom was with him and Mom had taken really quickly and consoled him and maybe explained things, he might not have the trauma. Am I kind of reading this correct? That sometimes things, even when we're younger, can sit in our sympathetic nervous system as trauma, something that we've experienced that just went like that situation is exactly how this individual that I coach described it. I
Yes.
mean,
and if it met all four of the conditions that I mentioned, then indeed it will be recorded as a trauma, which in a certain way is a major pain in the ass because anything that reminds you of that situation, looks like, smells like, tastes like,
right,
sounds like, then you go into reaction, and it may have nothing to do with that situation, but there's some part of it that reminds you. And because it is a safety mechanism, it is not going to go away
right,
because it's what kept you alive at that point. So while it is a pain in the ass in that it limits your choices in your life, it's also a safety mechanism. So it's also an act of grace on the part of your nervous system.
right.
And I'd like to talk a minute about why talk therapy won't touch this. Do you believe that would be useful to our
Yeah,
people?
let me just wrap up one thought and then we'll segue into that and then some responses even beyond therapy. But in this situation, it does show up as this little boy grows up because he realizes anytime there's a surprise, he goes like this and freezes and shuts down, and he therefore doesn't even like conflict. So if he were to walk into perhaps the family event at Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, and someone were to pull a quick surprise on him, he's not prepared for it. He reverts right back to that, and doesn't understand, why do I get so frozen? Why do I just want to shut down? And you said he's surviving.
Or run away, or
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 run away.
or have an uncontrollable desire to throw up. I mean,
Yeah,
the reactions are myriad, and they are all about keeping you safe and detached from anything even remotely like the original incident.
Yeah. And so do you think, again, I've heard you say many, many times, we all have trauma in our systems. How
Definitely.
paralyzing they are
Yes.
maybe at different levels. And it's interesting. So what you would suggest is that when we look at reaction that we have, if we could become self-aware, which is kind of what the whole leading heart community is about, is advancing our awareness. If we did actually just sit back and journal and say, what's the emotion I'm having? Where did it first start? Where did I first have this emotion at? And wow, did I feel like it was life-threatening at that time? That's interesting. I fell off my bike into the bushes and the bullies came after me, whatever it was, or you're in high school or college. Did I feel vulnerable to where I couldn't do anything? And did I feel like I couldn't get out? I mean, I was stuck. And do you believe that just by observing that, if you can, you will already help yourself move through what you might experience that way? Or do you feel like you still have to kind of unlock it? Because I've heard you say therapy doesn't work to unlock it and to release it. And I know that that's what your expertise is. So talk a little bit about that.
Yes. So I want to say that talk therapy is not useful in releasing the reaction. Being aware of the reaction and where it formed is important. And the story is important, and the meaning you made out of it is important, but it does not remove the reaction because the reaction is neurochemical. It's
Mm,
stored in the amygdala in the fight and flight center as a safety mechanism. So, because it is a neurochemistry and not just a cognitive impression in the executive functions, talking about it doesn't change it.
mm,
You have to actually change the neurochemistry, and to sit in positive neurochemistry while you experience the original inception or traumatic experience, so that your central nervous system gets the message that
yeah.
you are safe. You don't have to keep running this high impact neurochemistry. And that is the work that I do.
Yeah. So what's some of the physical things that might happen when you're going through that?
Going through the
Well,
react.
let's say, yeah, going through a reaction. Does everybody have a different, or, like, do your pupils in your eyes dilate? Do you get sweaty palms? Does everybody experience it physically differently?
They do. And actually, one of the things that is done when you begin to work on it is that we need a map of your reactions, because we
Ah,
have a very clear before and after. And the reactions are myriad. Some people feel an uncontrollable desire to run. Some people feel a desire to throw up. Some people have heart palpitations, sweaty palms. Um, they get sick at their stomach. It truly your reaction and my reaction are different.
right.
But the wonderful thing about these reactions, as awful as they are, is when you realize this is a deep desire to keep you safe and away from anything remotely similar. So, a soldier, for instance, who's been in Afghanistan in the theater and seen terrible things, may never want to go to a fireworks exhibit because it takes them back to the battlefield. So, even though they know intellectually that it's not the same thing, because some of the sounds and smells are similar to the battlefield, it hijacks them and takes them back there. Basically, it's holding them hostage in that time frame. And what that means is they're never 100% in present time, because some part of the brain is watching, watching, watching to be sure that they never get near. And it's exhausting to people.
Yeah.
Can sleep,
Um,
etc.
yeah, my sympathy and empathy to those who have served and go through that. I was I was replaying my first pregnancy and birth was took me totally by surprise. Totally. My second pregnancy, I was like, oh no, 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 no. You won't do that to me. No, 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 because I can remember them pushing on the belly to release everything and it having so much pain. And I can remember the contractions being so painful. And I can remember the back labor being so painful. I said at the end of that first birth, I'll never forget this.
I'll never do this again. Right.
Well, I did do it again, but I'll never forget. And so, therefore, the second pregnancy, I remembered the whole thing for 9 months. And boy, when I got ready to go to that hospital, I had my list of what the nurses could do and the nurses couldn't do. I was like, you will not massage my belly afterwards. You will not. I'd rather have a blood clot than go through that. So I do understand how you can just literally hijack an experience because of it. Some of the things I want to talk about also is some I want to talk about the ability to have the choice to not be triggered. So let's say that we don't have some deep trauma that's hijacking us, but we just have some behaviors. And I know this only from my own experience that sometimes we hear something, see something, taste. We experience things. Aunt Edna, we're experiencing the comma, the judgment, the opinion, whatever it is that's going to trigger us. And our egoic energy, says, yeah, mix it up. Tell her off. Don't let her get away with that. And we all know how that works. It feels good because I get a dopamine rush, right? Throughout the brain, or actually just to the midbrain, but it never works out really well. And so I want to talk about, it's simple, but it's not easy to just say, I'm going to choose not to. And one of my mentors many years ago explained something that I always remember. And she said, Fitz, if you won the lottery and you were going in the morning to go get your $1 million lottery ticket, and you slammed your hand in the door and there was some jerk that actually pushed the door on your hand, you probably wouldn't say anything. You'd go, oh, okay, thanks. Hey, get out of the way. Oops, oh, my hand, it hurts. And you'd get in the car and you'd be really excited because you were going to go win your $1 million lottery ticket. However, if you weren't going to have the $1 million lottery ticket and you went to go get in the car and some jerk came by and smashed you into the door and your hand got caught in the door and it really hurt and you were late or whatever it was, you'd emote. You'd get triggered. And she said, so it's really all what you were thinking about. The $1 million lottery ticket said you could have a choice not to be aggravated. Just let it go. Just release it. Without the $1 million, you might say, I'm going to tell this jerk exactly what I think. How dare he smash that door and walk past me and hurt my hand. So it's a choice. And I thought that's interesting. It is a choice. If it's $1 million I'm going for, I'm probably going to choose to be more regulated. But we don't have $1 million lottery tickets to pick up. So we get caught in it. So the choice, I just want people to know out there that if you could think about just pausing and breathing, that's why I kind of like that mental fitness gym from Positive Intelligence. It pulls you back to just say, what is a choice that I could have? What's the choice that I want to do here? And I've been on both sides of the fence where I've made really good choices and have just said, I'm going to release it. And I've also been on the side of the fence that I made poor choices and said, I'm really going to get in it and muck it up. One of the things I was also told, and I'd be curious what you thought, is if you could just begin at the moment that you need to make that choice, divert your attention someplace else. Maybe even the tactical touching the fingers or rubbing the toes or breathing isn't working. Maybe it's singing a song. Maybe it's whistling. Maybe it's doing jumping jacks. Something to shift the brain. What would you call that when you actually trigger the brain to think of something else instantly so that you get off of that replaying of, I'm really triggered about this? Is there any word for that, or it's just regulation of emotion?
Well, there might be, but I call it diversion. You find
Okay.
someplace else to go.
Mm-hmm. Mentally,
Yes.
in your
And
mind.
I have found that one of the presuppositions that people have when they are mad at in a situation and they just want to jump somebody's ass, they're done. No, is for a moment there's a presupposition that if I do this, it will be better, or
Right.
B, if I do this, I will feel better after I did it. And I think that what most people find out is that it will not be better. It will be what I call worser if they do it. And B, that it will not, you will not feel better after you feel better.
Yeah, I mean, you feel a little bit better at the time you hit the
A
wall or
slight
stomp your
relief,
feet,
but
but
then
that's
afterwards you realize that you have done generally more damage.
right.
You have damaged a damaged thing. And
Yeah,
that does not feel good after it feels good.
yeah. I often say to people I coach that when someone is emoting like that, they're getting a fix. They're getting the dopamine fix because the dopamine gets released from the brain, and that's what kind of soothes them temporarily until they go into hyper or hypo mode again, and they're right back where it starts. It just kind of escalates it. The other thing that we could do could be to just control your environment, get out of it, which I have done myself. I've been in certain situations where I've just said, excuse me nicely, and you know, I'm going to go stay someplace else for the evening, or take time out and go control my environment by getting in the car and going someplace where I have complete control and don't have to listen to the chatter of the conversation or whatever it is that's triggering me. And kind of like what you said, it might not be triggering anybody else, but it's triggering me because I have some trauma. So do you kind of agree with that, to control the environment? Does that help
To
control your own personal environment
by leaving.
by leaving or walking away? Not walking away ticked off, not flipping them off and making a big scene, but just with grace and ease. I need to go. I would say many times I need to go take care of myself.
Right. You're just creating what I call space and grace.
Yes, I need to take care of myself. I want to say another thing that you have taught me, and then we're going to move into some positive verbal responses, which should be fun to always have you in on. But one thing that Stephanie has taught me is to time trap things. So not always, and I think we talked about this last month in the fireside chat, not always are you in the mood when you're triggered to just leave with ease and grace. Not
Yes.
always. I even say there were some days I'm not gonna be, I can't even get thankful out as a word with honesty because I'm not thankful for what I'm experiencing. And so you would say time trap it. You'd say, Fitz, then set the clock for 3 hours and go have yourself a pity party. Just with yourself. Don't emote on anybody. But write it down. Feel lousy. Lay in the bed, curled up in a fetal position. Eat as many bonbons as you want. Watch that junk TV. Drink that icky pop. Whatever it is, just go ahead and do it. But time trap it. And maybe we even time trap a relationship longer than a couple hours, but for a week, and we give it space, or 2 weeks, or several months. But time trapping, that did come from you, correct?
Yes, but I'd like to add another piece to it,
Mm-hmm.
where you not only go and do that thing for the next hour, but you just say, for right now, I'm doing this. And the minute you demarcate it with time, that's another form. In
Mm.
this moment, I'm doing this. Because what you're saying to the brain is, this ain't forever, sister. Um, Today I will do this. And that says it's over after today. rather than I will always have this reaction. It's just the way it is. Shit happens and it continues. That's not time trapping. That's positive. That's
Yeah.
going into your future, but literally demarcating it as in the here and now, this moment, for the next hour, in this next day, I will do this, says, okay, I'm going to go and do this indulgent thing because it gives me some relief. And tomorrow is another day.
Right. Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah. Another thing that I've learned through the years from listening to all the Vistage experts and just kind of absorbing the wisdom is how to have the positive responses to the negative commentary or the negative feedback.
Yes.
And I think one of the greatest ones came from Boaz Rauschenberger, who said, here's a great response. Wow. 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 Somebody says something, blah, 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 blah. Wow. And it works. I've used it so many times because when you say wow, not like wow, but just wow. It could mean, wow, I really understand you. Wow, I'm shocked. I mean, the person just is like, oh, wow, how do they respond to wow? The other thing is the other most powerful one that I have heard is thank you for your feedback. I'll take it into consideration. And I have to say that one, when I first thought about a situation that I could use that, I must confess, I really thought, I am not interested in this feedback at all, let alone taking it into consideration. However, it did work because the response was okay. I kind of just dismantled them. So any other responses that you have? I've heard ask for the solution, repeat what they're saying. Another one, I'm listening, I'm understanding your position, I validate your perception. In Vistage too, we always talk about love, LUV, listen, understand, and validate. Doesn't mean that you have to agree with them. However, everybody can somewhat be disarmed if you validate them.
I totally agree. That takes the wind out. There's nothing and nobody left to fight with, because a lot of the rah stuff that people do at you is they're looking to grab you and to engage you in a fight. There's something about, well, I'm going to get you to come back at me. And if, your response is, I hear you, I got that, thank you. There's nobody there to fight with. And so all the wind goes out of the sail and they back away. There's nothing to weaponize with.
Yeah. You've been a great mentor on that and a great teacher of that. And it does work. It does. I mean, they may come back again at another time. However, they're gonna, if they can't feed off of your emotion, they'll go find someone else to feed off of.
They will.
And like energy attracts like energy. So why do you want to feed off of it? Because it's just going to bring it right back more to you.
There's nobody to batter. And so they back away.
Yeah. How about here's another really hard one. A lot of men that I mentor will in the beginning of their coaching say, I really don't have much empathy. We've even done the test to see how they score on empathy, and they kind of joke and go, yeah, I'm really low on empathy, and they don't quite get empathy and sympathy and what the difference is. I do try to explain that empathy is stepping into the other person's shoes. And I often will say to the new CEO that I begin mentoring, pretend you're sitting on a plane. You were just on a plane today, right? And you're on the aisle seat. And across the aisle is another individual who's having a meltdown, an exaggerated meltdown, an irritating meltdown. And I would say to the CEO that I mentor, right now you could possibly choose to be really triggered by Mr. Meltdown over here. Because you decided to sit on the plane and have a nice quiet moment, take a 45-minute nap, and Mr. Meltdown is melting down. Or in some case, it's the baby or whatever. And then I say, but in a year from now, after uh, we work together and I coach and mentor them, I say, I hope that by the time you're sitting in that plane again and there's a situation, you can have empathy and say, maybe this person has had a bad day. Maybe this person found out that they got cancer. Maybe they lost a loved one. Maybe they lost their job. Maybe they're just triggered emotionally and they just can't get to their own regulation. And you can give them grace and ease. And that's the power of empathy, and using that to create the choice of, I'm going to exhibit compassionate action right now and be compassionate towards my mood and vibe that I have right now on this individual and turn it around. Any insights on that? The power of empathy and the power of compassion to turn around the energy of I'm triggered by the meltdown happening,
Yes,
because we all have our stuff.
we do. And I want to say that some of the more powerful, what I call interventions of grace, occur when you don't even, because of when a person's really hot, sometimes engaging is not the most
Yeah.
powerful way to interact. You can literally sit there and say, what is the worst emotion that this person is experiencing right now?
Mm,
And let me ask myself the question, what would be the healed state that that emotion lacks? What does it need? And let me, in my mind, for a moment, send that state to them. So for instance,
So rewind just a little bit for me. So you
yeah,
said, ask what would be the healed state. I'm not sure quite what that means. So that individual's having the meltdown. I'm having empathy and compassion and observing it. And I'm going to ask myself,
what is the worst emotion that this person is experiencing right now? So
okay.
if what comes to mind is anger, then I would ask myself, so that's the worst emotion that
Mhm,
they're experiencing right now. So I ask myself the question, what is the antidote or the healing of that emotion? What would represent one step out of that towards healing? And as I sat with that, what I realized is that I take a breath and exhale. That's one step towards relieving anger.
mm,
So in my mind, I closed my eyes and sent to this person a picture, a
mm,
feeling, and the thought, I take a breath right now
mm,
and exhale.
mm,
And I've sent that several times. And what I found was that sometimes talking to somebody when they're really shaky is not the route, but
right.
they can hear what I call a healed emotion. So rather than dealing with the anger, you ask, what would be a step towards healing, and send that to the person. And my experience is that it's amazingly effective. It
Yeah.
bypasses uh, what I call the desire to fight with you, and just goes straight to the center of healing. And I have actually taught this one to teams of people that approach families in organ donations in the worst hour
Mm,
of their life.
mm,
We send the healed emotion to that family. So, what is the worst emotion that that family member might be experiencing right now?
yeah.
And then send them the antidote or the beginning of healing. And what it creates is enormous receptivity, because compassion flows through the atmosphere with healing.
Yeah. And thought is energy. And
Yes,
like energy attracts it. Yeah.
it's very profound, and it really has shifted a lot of the team's effectiveness with people that are just totally out of the box.
Yeah. And it's the same probably with why they say prayer works as well, because in prayer you're doing the same thing. You're sending the power of prayer, the power of intention. You know, Heart Math Institute would say through its research that hearts are connected, and they read the energy of the heart, you know, near to them long before our mind has even picked it up. And so if we can feel it in our heart, just as you said, and send it with compassion and love, a healing emotion.
Pretty amazing. I mean, isn't it what Maya Angelou said? It's not what you say, it's what I feel that you are transmitting when I'm around you that causes me to decide who you are. That's
Yeah.
how I know who you are. It's what I feel. It's not what you say. And so if you are transmitting a healed emotion, that I would suggest to you is mercy in action.
Mm-hmm.
It does a hell of a lot more than trying to calm somebody down.
Right. And anger is, you know, it does release the energy trapped within a body.
Does.
Whether that energy has been from fear and, you know, something threatening them. That's why, you know, we're getting angry. Whether we emote it on another person is another thing. That's a great example of having compassionate action towards someone else and empathy
Yes.
and sending love. There's also a time in these family environments, especially with the holidays coming up, that we're going to have to send it on ourselves.
I was
And
going to say that. Yes. You
and you sort of taught me that.
turn this one on you as well. So what is
Yeah.
my worst emotion right now? What is one step towards healing? Let me send that to me right now.
Right. And then I also have learned too, through the HER organization, which is a national organization called Healing, Empowerment, and Release. And they take women to retreats to really have us discover the things that make us tick and the things that give us joy and all those deep internal emotions and how to handle them. But what they have taught me that really works is to when I'm going into a situation like that to put up a shield. You would call it the permeable membrane that you know have taught me about. And when I have that shield up, I'm also kind of writing on it with my marker visually. Don't take it personal. It's their emotion. You know, it's no different than the guy in the airplane that's just emoting. Don't take it personal. Don't stand aloof. I don't need to make a stance like a judgment of, oh, well, you're a jerk, you're an idiot, you don't know what you're doing. Don't do that. Don't minimize. Just just stand there as you say in the prayerful moment and give love to myself, give love to them. Don't argue. Don't feel attacked. So now I'm talking to myself. Don't argue. Don't feel attacked. You don't need to point the finger. That's just all egoic energy, just telling you stories to just try to get you engaged in that egoic consciousness versus the love wisdom consciousness. Don't make excuses for it. Just here, don't make excuses for it. This is another Stephanie Shipper. Let it be like the weather. Let it flow in and flow out. Don't even take the time for the excuses. Do we have the excuse when the thunderstorm comes? No, we just let it come and we let it go, let it flow. And don't also deny that maybe it is a toxic situation and you might need to take some changes in the future. And that's okay because you can't be in relationship with anyone if you're not right with yourself. And we just can't be kind to everyone else, not kind to who we are. And other things that you can provide the community with some insights as they go through the holidays. Some days there's going to be maybe great days. For some, it's just a very difficult time. I understand that as well. Some will have been past their hero's journey, perhaps, and moving into a bright new joyful season and recreating new rather than going back and resetting into the old. Some may find themselves in new family situations. Any insights on that? If you could just leave some last words of wisdom, because you are the one who gives us the freedom of all of this through your work and how you help people.
Ask the question in another way. I want to understand what you would like right now.
If I could have a 3x5 card in the back pocket of my pants that kind of summed up all the wisdom or the most important thing for going forward into the holiday season, if someone was thinking they might bump into Aunt Edna or, some type of negative triggering moment, they could pull out that card and read it and go, yeah, what would your wisdom be on that?
I think that my wisdom would be, instead of trying to figure it out mentally, well, so what am I going to do? I find that that never works anyway. If you try to figure it out and be ready, it's like armoring. I think that the most important thing to do when you are approaching the holiday season and possible meetings with people like Edna, that you make sure that you ask yourself on a really good day, what are the things I have done for myself that make me feel wonderful, and do those things, because they give you what I call mini vacations, places of grace, so that you have space in the situation. I find that if you try to mentally sort it out, you've got armor and not much ease. I'd rather you begin with ease by doing for yourself, on particularly when you're going to be going to dinner with Edna, several of these things, so that you come in easy and able to give yourself space, because we know that Edna doesn't have it as an option.
Right.
Edna has no space. That's why she's a BI,
Mm-hmm.
right? Edna ain't got no space and no
Yeah.
grace. So give it to yourself so that you have enough grace and ease to make choices without armoring. You just get up and leave the room. You just say, oh, well, wow, you do these things.
Yeah.
Does that
That's interesting because my own wisdom download yesterday was the nudge to write all the things that bring me joy.
Here you go.
And so I decided to do 23. There's 23 days in the month of November, and then we hit Thanksgiving, and it was be thankful and joy and no joy. And so I did. I wrote a list of all the things, holding hands, whether it's holding the hands of a newborn or a little one or an elder person or someone you love or, whoever it is, the little things that just bring me joy. And then the kind of to button up that wisdom, it was manufacture it every day.
Cathy, do we have time for me to share an exercise that I think will give people grace and space, and they can
Sure.
walk away and do
Yeah.
it? Okay. So we're going to talk about what are called neurovascular points. They're also called emotional stress relief points. There's
Is that
two
why they say the horns come out of your head right there?
right here, 2 points in the center of your forehead that are called neurovascular points. And they're important because they perfuse the frontal lobe of the brain. Because when people are overwhelmed and distressed, all their blood flows down their spine for their hands to run away. So what I'd like to do is to just take a moment and invite people to put their hand gently on those two neurovascular points to close their eyes and deep breathe for a moment. And just do that. And some of you, after you've breathed for just a few moments, may notice a tingling or heat in your palm, which is actually the movement of the flow of blood. You are perfusing that part of your brain and causing it to sort of develop what I call like a space between you and the difficulty. There are also two neurovascular points that are on the back of the head, right underneath the occipital ridges of the brain. So if you'll take your hand and lay it gently there, and if you will close your eyes and deep breathe, holding these four neurovascular points while thinking of something overwhelming that's sort of coming at you, and play a movie of that. And once you get to the end of the movie, play it again and play that movie all the way through. And then one more time, do it again. And then once you've played it through 3 times, I think you're going to find that when you look at that movie the third time, that it's not that big a deal, that you now have distance from it. And the reason you have distance is that you have touched 4 perfusion points and brought the blood back up from your tail where it ran to get you out away from a situation, and it brings it back up to the brain and creates a distance between you and the incident where you can emotionally assess, experience, and make appropriate decisions because you have enough brain food up there now to do it. As a result, you cannot overdo neurovascular points. They are also called emotional stress relief points, and you can walk yourself out of a room and go in the bathroom and do this for 5 minutes. And I think you're going to find that you have space and grace between you and that situation, because it takes you out of what we call negative association, meaning reaction, into dissociation, stepping back and able to observe or witness. And it's very simple to do, and you can teach anybody to do this.
Yeah. I have done that in the boardroom with the leaders that I mentor, only I never did the back part. I just simply said, if you're stressed, press hard with both hands until you feel them throb, because you can feel the blood coming back up to the frontal lobe and the oxygen.
So I would augment that just a little bit. You don't want to press because the brain plates can move. You want to touch them gently and deeply. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
For both the front and the back.
Yeah. Thank you. Of
course.
I think we have had a great conversation over the course of this hour, and I so much appreciate the wisdom that you bring to the community. You'll be able to find her up in the directory, the Conscious Connection directory in the community if you want to reach out to her. I'll make sure that her website is also at the end of this video. And I'm really excited because on February 14th, we're going to be releasing my 3 books in the trilogy of Heartbeat. And so keep that on your radar. You can send me an email, fill out a form, and I'll reserve a signed copy for you for each book. And then in January or February, I'm going to do a new course called The Intuitive Leader, living as the intuitive leader. And so that's going to be interesting too. So anyways, check out the content button on theleadingheart.com. And Stephanie, thanks for the conversation. And I wish all of you a wonderful holiday season. And we'll catch up probably towards the end of this year or in 2024.